Now that the behemoth embargo hype wave has kind of settled a little bit, we need to talk about Sony in particular and PSVR2, because last week at the State of Play, we got the announcement that there would be no PSVR2 support for Astrobot, the brand new game for PS5 coming this September. They even had a trailer featuring the PSVR as a peripheral and the aim controller just to rub a bit of salt in that wound. But there's some things to consider when looking at Sony's lack of support for PSVR2 for Astro, when that decision would have been made in the production pipeline, how much money maybe would have had to been pumped into the game to get it up on PSVR2, and why the decision was taken not to do that. Sony's AAA output and first-party output in particular, in general, even for flat screen, is another thing to consider as well. There's a lot of factors going in here that will determine whether or not Sony are interested in supporting PSVR2 going forward, and to be honest, only time will tell if the support is going to ramp up or decrease. Not that long ago, we had a look at PSVR1's output in the first year compared to PSVR2, and it was clear that PSVR2's first year had a lot more big hitters. We've had GT7, Horizon Call the Mountain, Resi 8, Resi 4, No Man's Sky, Synapse. We've got Aces of Thunder coming along in year 2 as well, along with Alien, Behemoth, and Wanderer. And we just had Vertigo 2 at the start of this year as well, along with a whole host of other great games. But those are probably the big hitters for me that are really going to turn heads and maybe sell headsets. For PSVR, Sony didn't really push that hard to get proper games on there and opted more for experiences like PSVR Worlds, including like 40-minute experiences and games for people to play through, showcasing the tech rather than trying to get people coming back and investing in games that they could play for a very long time, at least in the first year. That would be my first point when looking at Sony's support for PSVR2, is that we are so early in this headset's life cycle. This is not a meta situation where they've got 2 or 3 years per life cycle of a headset until the new upgrade comes out between Quest 2 and Quest 3, and then Quest 3 to Quest 3S being the upgrade from Quest 2, kind of. The turnover is a lot faster, is my point, for standalone headsets like that, even for, say, Pico as another brand. They pump out a new headset fairly frequently, whereas with Sony, we've seen that with PSVR, it took a good 5-6 years until PSVR2 came along, and one, that makes it so that the tech is outdated compared to newer offerings as the years go by. But that's really the case with any tech, and you're going to be taking trade-offs, especially between different products. So that's a bit of a moot point. But yeah, Sony aren't really looking at this thing as a platform to rush games on within the first 2 years and maybe try and put out a load of output in terms of games onto the headset. They like to play the long game sometimes, like we saw with PSVR, as we didn't get some big hitters like Skyrim until quite a while after the headset launched. And the genuine point of conversation is that it is just too early to tell what their plans are for the headset in terms of games. And to be honest, that's been indicative of this entire console generation, to be honest. We look at the output of PSVR2 games in terms of getting people wanting to play them with big hitters like No Man's Sky, GT7, Resi 4, Resi 8, and then you compare the output on the flat screen as well. We haven't had a whole host of PS5 first-party Sony games really over the last couple years compared to what we would have had on PS4 or PS3. Games just take a lot more time to make now, and that goes tenfold for VR games because the amount of testing and optimization that has to be done for them compared to flat screen. If Sony does have VR games in the works, they're a lot more tight-lipped about them than, say, Meta are, who announce things left, right, and center for years to come. Take Grand Theft Auto for Meta Quest, that was announced a couple years back and we've heard nothing of since. Sony don't really do that, and I'm not saying one strategy is worse than the other or better than the other. It's just that we don't really hear about Sony's projects in the works until there's something really to show for it in terms of first party. I think they've learned their lesson with putting game teasers out, which are literally just a title to get people hyped, with no gameplay or even a cinematic to back it up, and they now bide their time a little bit more to reveal certain games or DLC. The point with this is that if there are some PSVR2 games in the works, we're not really going to get leaks about them very often or very easily, and we're also not going to get announcements from Sony until there's really something solid to show for it. That's not me saying that there definitely are loads and loads of first-party PSVR2 games in the works, or even that there are any at all, but we can't really tell because they're such a tight-lipped company in terms of their plans for the future. In the second half of this video, I want to dedicate to talking about Astro, because at first, I was a little bit annoyed, of course, that Astro is not coming to PSVR2, and I thought, well, shit, you know, the headset's kind of done for, they've clearly given up on it, but Astro's been in development for a very long time, and I think, in my opinion, the decision to implement PSVR2 support might have been decided on before the headset even launched. Astro is a title that really made two big splashes on PSVR, the original headset, with Astro's Playroom, which was my first ever PSVR game, and Astrobot Rescue Mission, which had universal acclaim from the PSVR fanbase. However, Sony have now seen this character as an opportunity to entice flat-screen gamers and create a platformer franchise that they can build off of. It's become bigger than just a VR mainstay, it's become a flat-screen mainstay series, and it's been in development for a very long time, has Astrobot for PS5, so I believe the decision to not implement VR would have been decided a little while ago, so they could put the maximum amount of effort into the flat-screen Astrobot game and really blow away the player base that they're trying to get by the damn thing, because that trailer made a big splash at the State of Play, has a 99% like record and loads of views on their trailer on the YouTube channel for PlayStation, and it's clearly done its job well. So of course I'm a little sad that we're not going to get Astrobot on PSVR 2. There's still the opportunity that, a patch could come later on, as plenty of other Sony first-party games like GT7 got support later, although the difference there was that the headset wasn't out at the time they were released, but it does show that this can be implemented after launch. However, it is worth mentioning that on the actual Q&A for Astrobot on the PS website, they do confirm there is no PSVR 2 support at the moment or planned, so we'll see. Anyway, that's about all I've got to say concerning the rhetoric on PSVR 2 saying it's a dead headset and Sony have abandoned it. It well could be the case that we don't get any more first-party Sony PSVR 2 games, but if you transported yourself back to PSVR at this point in time, you wouldn't really be overwhelmed by Sony first-party titles back then as well. You would have been in the same position, really, with a lot of good indies coming out, but nothing really first-party for a little while. The difference here is that the microscope is really being put on the headset because of the modern VR market and the modern social zeitgeist on VR as a platform nowadays compared to how it was back then. Every misstep that a headset makes, whether it be Meta, PSVR, Pico, DPVR, Vive, that is now analysed far more than it would have been back when VR was in its infancy. But to be honest, my final message is just, if you have a PSVR 2, just enjoy it. We've got loads of great games on here, and there's loads of great games on other VR platforms as well. So enjoy whatever you have. It's best to just disconnect from, all the Twitter nonsense of people claiming that every headset is dead every other day. And in my opinion, we can't really be affording to have a console war in such a niche and small market as virtual reality. It's just not worth it. That's why I don't usually cover topics like this and just focus on the positive things about gaming and VR gaming in general and PSVR 2, because it's just draining to sit there and see people arguing about whether or not a headset is dead or whether or not there's going to be any plans for the future. Just enjoy what you have. If you want to sell your headset, wonderful, go and do it. If you want to stick it out, see what Sony might have in store and enjoy the games that are coming along now and for the rest of the year, amazing. And if you really are waiting for a pivotal moment where Sony could announce something or reveal that they have no plans, the September showcase for PS5 is probably where you'll see that. So if you really want to stick it out and just wait until a big announcement to see if that really comes, that's the time to do it. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Thank you to our patrons, Luke Bentley, Phil Irving, Hazit Mirza, Ace Gamer, Jin007, A License to Chill, and Sun WTF. If you want to join the Patreon or YouTube membership, the links are all in the description below. Thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next one.